Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursue.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio Show. Once again with your host Nick Bernabe here on UCY.TV. Thank you all for tuning in. I'm really happy to be back with you after the weekend break. We had a very interesting show on Wednesday, and we've been having a bunch of great callers, and we really appreciate all the calls and everyone kind of playing by the book. We're used to getting trolled here and there. I mean, that's kind of comes with the territory here at the Anti-Media. But if anybody wants to call in tonight and sound off on the election and how you're feeling about what's going on with the polling and the Iowa caucuses, feel free to call in. 718-717-8296 is the call-in number. Once again, it's 718-717-8296. If you do call in, make sure you keep your microphone muted and your radio on silent until we get to you by your area code. We'll call you out by your area code, then you can start talking and you can join in with whatever it is we're talking about. And, that's how it goes. If you do interrupt, though, we're going to have to drop your call. So, just FYI. Special shout out to our friend Ponder and XL that hooked us up with the music for the radio show tonight and all nights. We're probably going to use another one of their songs when we do change the intro, but they're an awesome group here in San Diego. You can check them out on Bandcamp, YouTube, all that good stuff. And make sure you catch us Monday through Friday. We're here 5 days a week at 11 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Pacific, and we're talking about a bunch of geopolitics, all the stuff going on, the wars, the voting, the politicians, all this crap that we all know is going on. We try to break it down and have it make sense for people because, there's a lot of stuff going on, propaganda, disinformation, so many things. We don't always know exactly what's happening, but, it's nice to break it down here with a bunch of different people that have different perspectives and are willing to challenge maybe the mainstream narratives. I'm joined by my longtime co-host, DB Schwartz, tonight. What's up, DB?
Hey, man. Just watching the wrap-up for the Iowa caucus up here, and it looks like Bernie's going to squeak it out. And then it's even funnier in the Republican side. Trump loses to Cruz, and it's split like one-third, one-third, one-third with Rubio coming up in the rears. So their party's really splintered, and it's kind of hilarious, actually.
Well, my prediction has been for the since this whole thing started was that it was going to be Rubio, and I tell you what, man, the only person that's surprising tonight is Rubio. And so tomorrow he's going to get all the media attention, and I wouldn't be surprised if with Trump losing tonight that this isn't the beginning of the end of his campaign. We all know Cruz is easily taken down.
Hello.
And it's going to be so easy for Trump to be the for Cruz to be the fall guy and for Rubio to end up being the nominee for the Republicans. We're going to have to see how that plays out. But that being said, it looks like Goldman Sachs just won the Iowa caucus because, as we covered recently on the anti-media, Ted Cruz took $1 million loan from Goldman Sachs. His wife is also a employee of Goldman Sachs that's on leave right now during the campaign. Those not familiar with Goldman Sachs, it's pretty much the token evil Wall Street banking firm that profited handsomely from the bailouts. And kind of one of these companies that is probably, with the exception of maybe Monsanto, one of the most politically active mega corporations in the United States. They have bankrolled the last several presidents. They were Barack Obama's largest contributor. They were also Mitt Romney's largest contributor. So, I mean, these are the kind of people that play both sides of the aisle. They're also financing Hillary Clinton. And Cruz is in their pockets, and so I can't say I'm surprised. I mean, this is the American democracy as we know it at this point. We're also joined tonight by Claire Bernish. What's up, Claire?
I'm having a really good day, finally.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. So what do you make of this Iowa caucus? It does look like Bernie Sanders may pull through to the top. He's winning by one delegate. According to the latest count,
84% of the millennial vote, dude.
That's huge. That's huge. But at the same time, that's also kind of, I mean, on one hand, it's like, oh, well, he's getting the young people. Well, on the other hand, young people are also can't rely on him too much to get out there and vote. You know what I'm saying?
Well, I mean, until now.
That's true. There was, I found it really disturbing earlier today. There was some sort of trending hashtag that involved Hillary. I can't remember what it was, but I just, with her record and, flip-flopping and warmongering and accepting big money and from big banks and big donors and everything else, I can't believe anybody wants to vote for her.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting, and it's been said that Hillary's going to carry the women vote, and that's where her strong point is. Claire, as a woman living in the United States, and I know we've talked plenty of times on the radio and off air about our beef with Hillary Clinton. I mean, what is it to you that really makes her the villain that she is? Because from my view, I mean, she's done so many horrible things. I mean, it's not that she's not like some person that should be running for president. I mean, there's plenty of evidence that shows she should be charged with crimes, not only just for the email scandal, and that's pretty much superficial, but some of the information that's come out of this email scandal, the war crimes, the genocide in Libya, where she kind of let that go on and still supported the rebels that were doing it. I mean, some of this stuff is worthy of war crimes. I mean, Claire, what, from your perspective, what is the thing about Hillary that's just makes her so unpalatable?
Well, honestly, there are so many things to choose from. It would be hard to pinpoint something, but you're right. I mean, she could easily be charged with any number of, crimes in general, but also war crimes and just many horrible things. I think the thing that's most offensive about her is accepting so much money from corporations and the big banks. I just think that's, I mean, it's so hypocritical of her to say that she's going to represent the people and then to take that money from those people. I mean, at least Bernie is taking, smaller donations for the most part. That just seems to be his thing. Although I would never endorse him, that at least I can stand by. Where with her, there just really is nothing to stand by except for her being charged and put in jail.
Yeah, and I think are you covering some of this news about some of her donors?
Yeah, I am, and she has some really huge donors too, like Soros. Donated a huge chunk, and there are others too. But it's just amazing to me that anybody doesn't see that and see the hypocrisy and see why that is not a good sign for a future leader.
Yeah, I mean, when one guy like Soros, and Soros is kind of this token liberal billionaire that the Republicans kind of blame him for everything Obama, and it's Soros. It gets so tired to talk about Soros, but I mean, we can't deny the fact that this Soros guy is a major power broker in D.C. and globally. I mean, this is the guy, he's known as the man that broke the Bank of England. China has last week issued a direct threat against him because he's speculating against their currency now. I mean, this guy is a major player, and now he just donated millions of dollars to Hillary Clinton's super PAC. I mean, this to me is just so stereotypical of what the American democratic system has become. I mean, it's a couple really rich billionaires can basically sway the votes for the entire country, for all 300 million people that live here that are supposed to be represented by these politicians, and a handful of billionaires can sit there and just manipulate the entire system.
Yeah, and honestly, you brought up the whole woman aspect, and that is worthy of, it needs to be said that you can't just vote for somebody because they're female. You can't just put a war criminal in office because she's female because you think suddenly we should have a female president. That's like a piss poor excuse, in my opinion.
It's almost an exercise in the like, oh, we got away with what Obama did. Now let's put a Republican that we're telling you is a Democrat in, and she's a woman, so everything will change.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we got to get a little bit past this identity politics stuff, and Hillary's biggest strong point is that she can carry the woman vote and that she's got experience on foreign policy. Yeah, she's got a lot of experience on foreign policy with supporting a bunch of wars and overthrowing governments like Libya. I mean, God, how many times do we have to cover Libya in the past couple of weeks before people start understanding how awful of an atrocity Hillary Clinton helped spearhead over there? And as I mentioned briefly, I mean, she literally knew about a literal genocide going on in Libya against black African Libyans, and she literally turned the other way and said, "Whatever, we're going to support this. We're going to support these rebels anyway, even though they're committing genocide against black Africans." I mean, this is insane.
She established a separate State Department with its own server bank inside the State Department. Does anybody not realize she kind of tried to bring the shadow government into the modern era and got caught because she's that inept?
I was kind of thinking the same thing, actually. I mean, why else would she have basically used an alternate server completely out of the office she was supposed to be using? It doesn't, I mean, what else would be the purpose?
Yeah, I mean, that whole email thing. I mean, more and more details come out. We found out that there was talk between some of these diplomats regarding the gold-backed dinar, which Gaddafi was trying to institute in Africa, which would have been an Africa-wide currency backed by gold, and that was at least part of the motivation to overthrow that government. And that was one really big concern of France, which France is a NATO member, and a lot of countries in Africa are former colonies of France and Italy and those countries, and they still rely on a lot of their monetary system. Like, these people are forced to work in the same currency of the French. They're forced to use the francs and the euros. And Gaddafi was ready to challenge that, and Hillary Clinton stepped up to the plate for her NATO members, and decided that it was time to go overthrow that government, and that was part of the motivational factors there. And so that's something that we can't overlook. I mean, this is pure sociopath. She's a sociopath, man. She's willing to sacrifice an entire country, throw an entire country into a civil war, deliver them to the hands of extremists like ISIS, which is now moving into Libya, which wasn't there before. ISIS came into Libya after we tossed out Gaddafi. Hillary Clinton is, in my opinion, one of the most responsible actors in that whole thing, and we can't excuse Obama on this, but Hillary Clinton really was the one that was spearheading that thing. And so there's that.
And Gaddafi actually warned that something like ISIS might happen too, that extremists would come into the country like that. I mean, and now we're going in. We've already had a couple military sorties in Libya already. And it's not as if, any president, whether it's Obama or the next, is going to actually ask Congress for permission to do so. They're just going to do it.
Exactly, and we covered that today as well in the anti-media. Claire, you actually wrote about it, about how we're getting ready to go back into Libya now. We went in 2011. We established a no-fly zone. We put the drones in there. We put the Air Force in there. We knocked out all of Gaddafi's air defenses. We started bombing him. We got him on the run. Our drones were hunting him down, and then he was caught and executed publicly, put on display, and then the country fell into the hands of warlords, basically, rivaling tribal factions and rivaling governments. Now there's two separate governments in Libya that are fighting against each other, one in Benghazi, the other in Tripoli. And then you got like dozens of different warring tribal factions over there. I mean, it's the place has become a total mess. I mean, there's no solution to the Libya mess. The only solution that was there was Gaddafi, and he held it all together by, I don't know how he did it. I know he was a dictator, and he probably did some awful things as well, but he held the country together in one way or another. Kind of similarly to how Saddam Hussein held Iraq together, and now we see what kind of is falling, how Iraq has fallen apart once we toppled that dictator, and now how Libya is falling apart after we toppled that dictator. And now Syria, the same path is being blazed right now in Syria. They're trying to do pretty much the same thing, topple a secular dictator. Now these guys, Assad, Gaddafi, Saddam Hussein, these aren't nice guys. These aren't good people. These aren't democratic, human rights respecting, free speech respecting politicians. No, they're not. They're dictators. But
that's also their culture. And people need to understand, even if we depose them, they don't want our style of government, no matter what.
Yeah, and shit, we're sitting here talking about the Iowa caucus. I mean, I don't want our style of government either. I mean,
exactly.
It's like I don't blame anybody that is like, oh, we don't really want to do this American style quote unquote democracy, because it really isn't democracy. It's about who can control the resources and who can control the power levers.
We arguably have our own dictator. I mean, it's not as if we get to vote on anything democratically or, voice our approval or not. It doesn't matter what we vote or what we say or what the majority of the populace wants. They're going to do it anyway.
Hey,
Obama says over and over again, no boots on the ground. And, in the time that I was writing this article overnight, there were boots on the ground already. It came out that there had already been, military action there. So it's just a matter of time, and it's going to be sold to the public. I'd be willing to bet as we're fighting ISIS, and that's going to solve all the problems in Libya, when we all know damn well that it's not going to.
Hey, you're going to have a choice between Hillary Clinton and Marco Rubio, so don't act like you don't have a democracy.
Why doesn't Obama just use GM mosquitoes against ISIS? What an asshole.
We're gonna get into the mosquitoes. We got some great updates on that. Well, not great, but we've got some updates on that. And we're also going to have a guest later to talk about what's going on in Porter Ranch. First, DB, I want to go over to you and get a little bit of your perspective about this, the Bernie Sanders movement. And I'm not a believer in the Bernie Sanders. I'm not feeling the burn per se. And of course, the anti-media is not endorsing any candidate in the race. But I know some of these towards Bernie Sanders. DB, I mean, what do you make of this rising Bernie Sanders movement? It looks like he's going to win Iowa, man.
Well, the millennials are, just like me and you, only they've had this information web at their fingertips since they could read. So essentially what they're realizing, like anybody really would if they've researched, is that we're rapidly becoming a post-human economy. And when I say that, I mean, if you work a blue-collar job, it's going to be replaced by a robot. It's just a matter of when. And we have a ton of people. And if Bernie can be the beginning of social protections that we're going to need, like the basic income and like all the things we need to survive and thrive for free, and we're going to just have to divert the money from somewhere else. I mean, it'll have to come from the military somewhere else. But the thing is, man, nobody wants the current political process who could change it if they could. But we have how many other people that still vote, still go out, still, are in the process, and you have to vote against the tyranny of the majority. I mean, look what's happening in Iowa, dude. It's a close thing. We have 4 Republicans and 1 Democrat, and people think we actually have an open election. It's a farce.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I'm looking at the latest numbers now. It looks like Hillary Clinton may be pulling ahead. She's got about 1% advantage over Sanders. It looks like they're tied in the delegate count right now, which I think in Iowa is what really matters, is the delegate counts. And whoever can secure the most delegates ends up winning. But I'm not too familiar with the caucus process, to be honest. I mean, it's a very complicated process, and it requires a lot of dedication. And I definitely feel like Sanders has the more dedicated following, while Clinton probably maintains an edge on the older, typical, I'll vote Democrat regardless, no matter what, crowd. And Sanders, as you mentioned earlier, DB, is very much propelling himself based on the youth. which of course is kind of, as I mentioned, it's a bit of a tricky. That's kind of rough. It's a risky bet to hedge on the youth, because there's no telling if they're actually going to show up to vote or if they're going to follow through on the caucus process. There's a good chance now. Looking at the numbers, I mean, there's a good chance Hillary Clinton pulls ahead and wins Iowa. Does that torpedo Bernie Sanders' campaign, or does he fight on?
Well, he'll fight on. It's going to be deflating if that happens, but he's carrying some places like 80 or 90% of the vote, and that's the millennials. And I think basically if you didn't go through the Red Scare, then you're not going to label him a communist. You're going to understand what a democratic socialist is and understand that if there's no jobs, the government's going to have to come in and do what it's there to begin with, which is provide for people that can't provide for themselves. That's the only reason it's there. Otherwise, it's just the strongest people beating everybody up, taking everything. That's the whole thing, man. It's a consensus. So we know jobs are shifting away. We know the American economy is on the edge of collapse and the military is keeping us propped up. And it can't last forever. And we need to make government work for us. Otherwise, we're going to have anarchy, a civil war, and me and you are probably not going to be here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting to think about. I think, Sanders has this kind of idealistic view of government, that it can be used for the good of things, and I think that he truly believes in that, and Clinton, on the other hand, and I think Cruz wins Iowa. I think that really deflates Donald Trump a lot. I think Donald Trump, if I don't know, man. I think that Cruz goes on and he becomes the front runner, and then Cruz is easily beaten by Marco Rubio. Cruz is like so easily defeated. I mean, this guy once the establishment gangs up, they just wanted to get rid of Trump. They've effectively got the ball rolling on that tonight by beating him in Iowa. And now that Cruz is going to be the front runner, he's so easily beaten that I don't see now at this point. Unfortunately, the predictions that I've been making since the beginning of this process, that Marco Rubio is probably going to be the Republican nominee, now that to me is starting to look a lot more realistic, and that's very unfortunate because Marco Rubio and Hillary Clinton are almost identical on every single policy except for social policy. I think Rubio and Clinton differ on same-sex marriage and abortion. On everything else, I think they're almost identical. National security, spying on the citizens, supporting the empire, being, brinkmanship with Russia, teetering on the brink of World War III. These are things that Clinton and Rubio both agree on. And
they're old school and new school neocons, dude. That's what they are. Like, if you want to see the next generation of neocons, there's Marco Rubio for you.
Exactly. And Hillary Clinton as well, I think if she becomes the Democratic nominee, well, she's got so much baggage. And I really do think, and I hate to be overly conspiracy minded on this, but I can't help but look back at the 2008 election and look at John McCain, and the fact that John McCain was literally he ran to lose. I mean, there was no way in hell that guy was going to be elected against Obama, but they put him up anyway. And I think this is the same scenario we're going to see with Hillary Clinton against Marco Rubio. If that ends up being the case, there's no way in hell Clinton beats Rubio. I mean, Rubio is so much younger. He's Latino. He speaks Spanish. He's young. He's good looking. He's got very little baggage, at least compared to Hillary Clinton. I mean, yeah, he's done a bunch of bad voting. He's missed a bunch of votes. He supported the empire. He supported the NSA spying and all that stuff. But by comparison, he's got zero baggage compared to Hillary Clinton. Rubio will win the election, and the Republicans will take the White House, and but it doesn't really matter, Clinton or Rubio. They're almost, like I said, they're almost identical candidates anyway, and it's status quo, 100% status quo.
She's going to bring back the old tradition of the front runner from the other party being her VP. Watch.
That'd be unfortunate.
Might as well merge the parties because they're the same anyway.
Yeah, seriously. I mean, if Hillary Clinton's the nominee, I mean, you might as well just say, you know what, both parties are the same. We got a couple callers on the line. I'm sure they want to start sounding off about this Iowa election and all that. First, I'm gonna go in order here of who called in first. First, we're gonna go to 314 area code. How's it going? You're on the Anti-Media Radio. What do you have to say about this Iowa caucus? All All right, 314, you're being dropped. Sorry about that, but you got to speak up when we get to you. 941 area code, what's up? You're on the anti-media. What do you think about what's going on in Iowa?
Well, this is exactly what I think about what's going on. Okay, I'm an artist. I perform music. I go by holy styles, and I kill demons. And by demons, I mean politicians. Father God, I got to clean these dirty niggas like dirty dishes. Dawn detergent while I'm blasting these evil ass bastards. They spraying poison on us daily. I'm trying to kill Satan with every line of hatred. Obama's an abomination, misleading the nations. They're trying to wake up a whole human population. Father God, we live in a revelation. They're trying to save them. Holy styles, look me up on Facebook. Vini Illuminati Deliano. Killing demons in the name of Jesus.
Dude, that was amazing, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, that was all off the head. I'm smoking the manna right now, straight sativa. I'm getting the herb. I'm getting the my father's revealing it to me, and I'm starting to see this whole world.
Man. Awesome. Dude.
No, I know how this whole planet works. I know how this whole planet works, and I see what's happening. And I'm gonna wake everybody up. I'm gonna save the whole planet. I'm bringing in white ISIS. I'm gonna kill these demons. I am white ISIS. I'm gonna build an army. We're gonna get everybody who has Second Amendment rights, who has a right to bear arms, to follow me. Holy Styles, look me up. Jimmy Illuminati Deliano on Facebook. I'm gonna kill the Illuminati. I'm Pac reincarnated. Holy Styles, Jimmy Illuminati Deliano. Promote me, and we can stop these demons in the name of Jesus. That's
awesome,
all I
man.
Hey. I don't care about the money. Just promote me.
Thanks
I'm a Christian rap artist, and I'm the only one doing this. We gotta kill these damn demons.
Thanks for calling in, man. Feel free to call back, dude. We're here 5 days a week.
Hey, log me in. Log my number. Look me up on Facebook. That's Vinny Illuminati Deliano. Kill. Write it down. UMANATI.
We got you. Thanks for calling. Well, that was interesting. That was actually pretty cool. Anyway, we got another caller on the line as well tonight from 512 area code. How's it going? You're on the anti-media. What do you think about what's going on in Iowa?
You hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm just barely checking out this talk show, man. It's actually kind of interesting, but the guy before me is kind of fucking crazy, man.
Hey.
I'll just keep on listening, man. Shout out
to the circus.
From the. What was that?
I said, welcome to the circus. You listen long enough, you'll hear all kinds of crazy stuff on here.
Yeah, man. Shout out all the way from the Eagle Ford Chill out here in Texas. Oil fields fucking slow as shit. See what's going to happen. It's all due to politics and shit like that, but I just keep on listening, man.
Cool, man. Well, hey, thanks for calling in. You could stay on the line here. Just make sure you mute your phone if you're gonna just listen in on your phone like that. If you want to chime back in, feel free to interject here. We're gonna continue on with some more of this election coverage, and then we got some other stuff to talk about. I got to refresh these numbers here and see what these votes are looking like. It still looks like Hillary Clinton ahead by 1%. The delegate count looks relatively tied. And, you know, the Iowa caucus, I don't think it's actually – the delegate counts aren't actually set in stone until several days later when they have the state convention, I believe. And so the numbers that are going to be coming out now, it's really just all for the media. And the media is going to take whoever wins the most votes and the most delegates tonight, and they're going to give that person they're going to crown that person the winner. Now, Ted Cruz has already been crowned the winner of Iowa, and they're still counting what's going on between Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. The other guy, O'Malley, I don't even know who that guy is. Apparently he's running. I know he was in the debates, but they didn't give him any speaking time. They weren't giving anyone else any time to talk. It was all Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders. So I guess we're going to just have to keep watching that and see how it develops. I want to get into some of these stories that we've been covering on the anti-media before we have a caller from the Los Angeles area that has been a witness to what's been going on in Puerto Rancho, that huge methane leak. And Claire, I know you've been covering that too, so I'm sure we're going to have an interesting discussion on that. But big story now developing is about this Zika virus. Now we're going to come back with more updates on the polling from Iowa as they come in, but let's move on to the Zika thing because we had an article go pretty viral over from last week about the Zika virus and the fact that it kind of kind of, I guess we can say, coincidentally or not, in the epicenter of this outbreak of microcephaly, which has been linked to the Zika virus in Brazil, is coincidentally in the same area where they released these genetically modified mosquitoes over a relatively long period of time. I believe the experiment started in 2011, and then they started putting these mosquitoes out into the public, into the wild, in a pretty heavy volume. I think it was like 500,000 mosquitoes a week or something like that. And then there was a study that came out in 2015 about the mosquitoes, and they claimed to be a huge success. But Claire, as your article pointed out, maybe these mosquitoes are not doing what they were supposed to do because of some environmental factors that weren't really thought about, or maybe they were just overlooked for the sake of making money. I mean, what do you think, Claire?
Well, it was just a theory, but I thought the correlation with the explosion in the Zika virus and the location of like the largest releases of these GM mosquitoes, it just seemed awfully striking. So it looks like the mosquitoes are designed to die off before they reach maturity, as long as there is no tetracycline in the environment. But when I was researching this, it turns out that Brazil is the third largest user of tetracycline for its farm animals, its food animals, in the world. And the problem with that is that tetracycline in farm animals has been found to basically pass through their systems and survive intact at a rate of like 75%. So the tetracycline runs off of farms into, sewers and waste and everything else. It pollutes the environment. So there is very much the presence of tetracycline, which means that this planned death of these mosquitoes, the actual genetically engineered facet that makes them, supposedly a valuable commodity, just won't work with the presence of tetracycline. And with that much tetracycline, and it doesn't take much to make this not work, they're going to keep going. And so even the sorting procedure, they were only supposed to release the male genetically modified mosquitoes into the environment, which is fine because the females are the ones that bite. But there are problems that they sort them by hand, and they admitted to having problems doing so. And so with all of these factors involved, and there's like a failure rate in the first place, even without the tetracycline in the environment, there's a failure rate for the genetically engineered facet of these mosquitoes. It just was a failed project from the beginning, and scientists seem to alert this company, Oxitec, to this problem from the beginning, and it doesn't appear like anybody ever listened to them and did any further studies about this failure rate or any other, ways to engineer these mosquitoes better, if there is such a thing. And when they released them and there was this explosion of Zika virus, that's a problem.
So, I mean, just to be clear here, we published this article on the Anti-Media late last week, and it got a lot of attention. But we never made the claim that these mosquitoes were the ones carrying the virus.
Yeah.
We never. The article doesn't say anything like that. But all we said was that there's this, coincidental correlation between the fact that where this microcephaly is breaking out is the same area where the mosquitoes were also released. Now, over the weekend, there was a bunch of debunkers that went and they were saying, there's these conspiracy theorists that are saying that the mosquitoes are carrying the GM mosquitoes are carrying the virus. They didn't go after us directly, but they went after people that had aggregated the article that had changed the title to make the title that said that they were that the virus was being carried by the mosquitoes. But regardless of the fact, a lot of these debunkers actually went off on conspiracy theories of their own because they came out and said, no, the mosquitoes are not carrying the virus. The fact of the matter is that there's no science to prove that they are or are not. And so That's the thing, is that, unfortunately for a lot of these debunkers, and I think, what was the one of these big science magazines?
What about Snopes? I mean, they just showed what a freaking pansy website they are.
Yeah, I mean, the Snopes didn't even debunk it. Snopes just says that it's not provable that the mosquitoes are carrying it, which is not the claim that we made anyway. But one of these science magazines.
It was Discover magazine that the biggest supposed debunker wrote a huge article about it, but and she kind of called me out by name on it and basically called me a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist when all I was actually writing in the article to begin with was the proposition that perhaps this should be studied as not effective as a solution. Maybe we should be looking at something else as a solution to the Zika virus pandemic that's coming instead of releasing more genetically modified mosquitoes. And obviously she didn't kind of get the point.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, the problem is that other people took the article and changed the headline, and then people went and debunked it without reading the article. And so that's one thing. The other thing here, in a new development from today, is that a very prominent researcher and journalist in the UK is now kind of also saying, hey, maybe there is something to look into about this. And Claire, we were looking at this a little bit before the show. What can you tell us about this?
Well, I mean, he actually has a background. He was trained at Oxford as a physicist, and he has a background in environmentalism and, a lot of the problems that humans sort of create. And he took the theory and said, basically, it was a very valid theory that really needs to be checked out before they release a bunch of new GM mosquitoes, which is what I was saying to begin with. So it's kind of nice to have, a little bit of confirmation that, these are valid concerns. They need to be addressed. We can't just go and make it's not necessarily even going to make the problem worse, but it's not going to solve it. And that's really what the whole idea of the article that I wrote in the first place was about. I mean, we need to look for ways to effectively solve this issue, and just doing more of the same thing, almost like voting, doing more of the same thing over and over again is not going to fix it.
So this article...
He actually went into detail on the scientific end and explained exactly all of the different facets of why the theory actually makes sense, with the GM mosquitoes not actually solving the problem. So it was good to actually see this in print.
Yeah, and this article's over on the ecologist.org, and this journalist and researcher, he's also works for the BBC, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I found it interesting as far as what he's talking about here, because I didn't think about this, but what he talks about in his article is the fact that there's a possibility that these mosquitoes, the genetics that have been genetically modified into these mosquitoes, are being piggybacked into the virus now. Because the interesting thing about Zika virus is that it was discovered in, I believe, 1947, and it originated in Africa, and it's pretty much a very mild infection. I mean, it's less than the common cold. It doesn't even give you very many symptoms, and it hasn't really done anything. It hasn't even been a serious issue. It doesn't cause hardly any deaths. But the issue here in Brazil is the fact of why all of a sudden is Zika virus being associated with microcephaly, right? And microcephaly is this condition that these babies are being born with the small heads, and they're not developing correctly in the womb, and so this virus has become particularly dangerous to pregnant women and women that are looking to get pregnant. In fact, some countries are saying, hey, they're telling all the women in the country don't get pregnant until 2018. I think in Guatemala, I think it was.
El Salvador, too, a couple places.
So, some of these countries are taking this threat very seriously, and they're telling women, look, just don't get pregnant because we don't know what the hell is going on with this. So I think this guy writing in The Ecologist, Oliver Tickle, he was really making this correlation between the fact that Zika virus went from being this relatively, harmless virus to all of a sudden now in Brazil it's causing these horrible birth defects, this causing microcephaly. And so he's saying in this article that there's a very good chance that the genetics from these GMO mosquitoes, which were supposed to die off but they didn't account for, or they overlooked the fact that this antibiotic was going to be in the environment, and so that some of these mosquitoes were going to be able to survive and reproduce. What he's saying here is that some of this genetics may be piggybacking into the virus, and that is what may be causing microcephaly from the Zika infection. And so that's a very interesting aspect, something I didn't think about. And I'm glad that this article got the attention of a scientist that actually knows the research and knows the science behind it that can actually really give us some answers as to what may be going on over there. Because it's not very often where you see a virus just go from being one thing to being a completely different thing. And this is exactly what's going on with this Brazilian strain of the Zika virus.
And, one of the scientists that originally worked on the project and actually studied the mosquitoes long before they were released said that a possibility existed for a subspecies to develop. And if what he's saying is true and what this scientist said before is true, then this might be the subspecies that she warned about. It's very possible. I mean, I don't want to make that leap. It's a theoretical, proposition. But at the same time, this, the World Health Organization declared an international state of emergency because of the Zika virus today. So this is a really serious situation, and I think it needs to be examined more closely. And I don't think that something this pertinent can just be ignored and brushed off as some crazy conspiracy theory. I think there are legitimate points here.
So anyone out there listening want to look more into this? I mean, this Zika virus, again, it came out of nowhere. It's causing these horrible birth defects. We're looking for answers here, and I think that all questions should be asked. I think the debunkers on this were overly aggressive, and I mean, literally, the claim we're making is nothing more than the fact that this outbreak of microcephaly is coinciding with the place that they were testing out these GM mosquitoes. That's all we're saying, right? And the debunkers went extremely aggressive, like, don't question genetic modification ever. It's like, dude, sometimes science goes wrong. I hate to break it to you, scientists out there listening, but sometimes science is not always what it seems to be, and sometimes it's used to harm people. In fact, I would make the argument that, because of scientific breakthroughs and technology, as Stephen Hawking recently warned, that's the stuff that kills the most people, man. It's technology being used in the wrong way or being held by the wrong people, or nuclear weapons being held by the wrong countries and things like that. That's what causes a lot of destruction. So, I think that it's very very healthy to question this science, especially something as new as these GM mosquitoes. It's a relatively new technology that's just being documented now in 2015. The first actual wild experimentation with this is finally being studied last year. I think
doesn't this feel like a dry run to anybody? I mean, how to create a contagion before trying the airborne? You put it into a mosquito, that way you kill the mosquitoes and do the data first on the first run. I mean, that's what it seems like to me.
I don't know. I wouldn't go that far on it.
I wouldn't either, but I would say that this is a perfect example of hastily applied science in the interest of profit and the refusal to take responsibility for what could have gone wrong and follow up on test results and actually, research further when you find that there is a failure rate. That's my opinion. So
go check that out on the Anti-Media. Go over to the Ecologist, check that out. Check out the debunkers too. I mean, form your own opinion on this. I mean, I think it's still up for. I think it needs to be studied. I think the correlation there should be looked into.
Michael Moore said he's going to go down and get bitten a bunch of times, see what happens.
And he's going to lead a revolt. No, I'm just kidding. Let's leave that up to Bernie Sanders over in Iowa, right? We got a guest now on the line. We have Carrie Wedler joining us, our awesome editor on the Anti-Media, and she's also from the area where this methane leak over near Los Angeles is going on, and so we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first, Carrie, I want to get your opinion on what's going on in Iowa. I mean, are you cheering for Hillary Clinton over there, or what's your take?
Oh, I'm not cheering for anybody. I know that it looks like Bernie Sanders supporters are going to have something to be optimistic about tonight. I'm hitting refresh on Google. I Googled Iowa caucus, and it gives you the results. And Clinton has 49.8 with 22 delegates, and Sanders has 49.6 with 21 delegates. So either way it goes, I don't think some of the more fervent supporters in this caucus, whether left or right, are going to have any reason to stop. I think they're going to be reinvigorated. I am not one of those people, so I can't comment. I will not participate, but it's definitely interesting to watch. I will say that much.
So, Carrie, I know maybe this is a little embarrassing to you, but I know you voted for Obama back in 2008. And you have a famous video on YouTube that's got like well over 1 million views about you burning your Obama shirt after you realized how much of a kind of, how just all those broken promises and stuff that he made. Do you see any similarity between Obama campaign in 2008 and the movement behind Bernie Sanders right now?
I mean, there are definitely a lot of similarities. The Washington Post just had an article where they talked about all of Bernie Sanders' great promises. There's progressive promises. And in effect, it was saying that he's just telling people what they want to hear. We can have free college. We can have free health care. Everything can be free. We just have to tax the richest people in this country. And, you know, I'm not an economist. I don't think that sounds very reasonable. But for me, the biggest issue that really parallels Obama is that Bernie Sanders talks a pretty decent game about military intervention and how it's a waste of money and how we shouldn't be doing it. And he's very proud of his vote against the Iraq War. But in multiple statements, I've heard him in the same sentence criticize military intervention and then finish off that thought by saying Assad needs to go. So I'm sort of like missing the logic here. And for me, I've always been motivated by foreign policy and trying to stop war. That was really what first inspired me to get active. And, you know, that's why I liked Obama, because he said he voted against the war and he promised to stop the wars and he didn't stop them. And my view is that even if Bernie Sanders wanted to really change foreign policy, which I don't think he does, his support for Israel shows that, his support for ousting Assad shows that, he's voted at least a couple times for military budgets. He didn't vote for all of them. I don't want to perpetuate that falsehood. That's not true. He voted against some military expenditures. But at the end of the day, even if he went in with the best intentions, he can't stop that. He's not going to stop decades worth of American empire. And even if he wanted, he couldn't. There's just no way. He doesn't have that power. And that's why, to me, it just seems, his campaign seems a little false. And so does everybody's campaign. It's not personal. It's not just Bernie Sanders. It's everybody. And so it's a little disheartening to watch, just because even if Bernie Sanders, who is considered the anti-establishment candidate, even if he wins, what's really going to change? As long as the foreign policy, military, industrial apparatus is in place, I don't see much room for really revolutionary change anywhere else.
Yeah, and I'm kind of on the same boat here. I'm not feeling the burn myself. I went to the doctor to make sure. But you know, the prospect of Hillary Clinton, and it's hard to say at this moment. I hate to bring back up my prediction, but the prospect of Hillary Clinton versus Marco Rubio, it's a lot scarier to me than the prospect of Bernie Sanders versus anybody else. I mean, as you said, Bernie Sanders has not been completely consistent on the war, but at least he's like slightly better than Hillary Clinton, right? Hillary Clinton.
I can agree with that, but at the same time, it's like, cool. So the New American slogan is slightly better than the worst possible thing. You know, it's
slightly not as bad.
That's what people are content with. I can't really, there's not much reason to be optimistic.
Yeah, and so that's where it's the kind of sticking point there. I think Clinton. Oh man, I think she's a nightmare, and I think Rubio is even worse. And it really, to me, looking at the results tonight, that seems to be maybe the playbook that's going to roll out here. If Hillary does squeak out a win, she's only up by 2% as the last time, or 0.2%. Last time, 0.3 now. The last time I checked. If she wins here, that is kind of an upset. I think Sanders was kind of the favorite to win Iowa. I know he's the favorite to win New Hampshire. But, I mean, it's all going to depend on the media function here. After coming out of Iowa, it's all going to depend on what the media decides to say. And I think we all know what they're going to say. It's going to be, Clinton and Rubio. The big story here is Rubio getting third place. Right. And Clinton upsetting Sanders. I mean, this is going to be the media narrative tomorrow. I wouldn't bet my entire life savings on it, but I'd bet a good portion. That's what we're going to see. I think the media is going to run off with this thing. I think the media is already in the pocket of Clinton, and they've already, the establishment media is going to work with the establishment political groups. The Democrats want Clinton, the Republicans want Rubio, and that's probably going to be how it plays out. Trump losing tonight, which has already been fully confirmed, is going to...
He's a loser.
Yeah, he's a loser. I mean, he's a loser. There's no getting past that. Cruz is going to be put forward as the supposed front runner, only for him to be destroyed in the next month or two, and Rubio's going to be the last standing. And all the Bush money, all the Jeb Bush money is, according to the latest reports that I've seen, is now going to Rubio. Rubio's going to have the money for the long haul. He's got the most. He's going to have the most money in the super PACs. I mean, this guy is going to be there. He's going to probably end up possibly being the next president. and it's Bush. It's a fourth term of Bush. It's Bush.
Well, and
That's what Rubio is.
the scariest thing to me, too, is that if it were Sanders versus Rubio, which I personally don't think that's ever going to happen, the DNC will never allow that. But even if it did, at least there would be some substantive debate. I mean, I still think Sanders is establishment, but he voted against the USA Freedom Act. You know, he voted against the Iraq War. At least he's willing to marginally criticize the military. If it's Clinton versus Rubio, in that case, since they agree on everything substantive, the only thing that's going to happen is the media and the politicians will just, they're just going to drive a much deeper wedge between the American people on the most tiny of issues. You know, not to reduce abortion as being a minor issue, but abortion, which is a social issue, versus systemic, comprehensive corruption and rot in the system. I'd rather talk about the latter. But if it's Clinton, then things will be whittled down to the most stereotypical of left versus right, and it's going to be really sad to watch.
With Clinton Rubio, it's going to be an exercise in propaganda. It's going to be who can be more hawkish, who can spy on you more.
Right.
I mean, who can reduce your liberties the most? I mean, this is Hillary Clinton versus Rubio. This is the propaganda function here. And then it's going to be like, oh, who's the most moderate out of this guy wants to control 90% of the world and she wants to control 100. Well, I guess 90% is better than 100. And that's the debate that we're going to see if that's how it plays out. And I just hope that it doesn't, but unfortunately it probably will. Getting past this election stuff, we're not going to really know. It's going to be a little while longer before we know, and it's probably going to be after the radio show's over. But Carrie, you've actually been firsthand experiencing what's going on there in the Los Angeles area with this big methane gas leak going on. And there's so many different reports and stories, updates, disinformation, underreporting. I mean, for the longest time, we couldn't even get the mainstream media to talk about this methane leak. It was just being pretty much ignored. There was a couple like local news stories on it and stuff, and then all of a sudden it burst onto the mainstream, I think at least partially thanks to some of our own coverage and stuff like that. What can you tell us? I mean, you've been to some of these meetings, you've been in the community, you're probably breathing in some of that methane right now, unfortunately. What's going on out there?
I mean, it's so crazy that someone who lives there just, I watched residents go. I went to a hearing, and forgive me because there's so many bureaucracies involved, and it's so convoluted. Like, I've been trying to figure out what the hell is going on for months now, and I'm just, every time I hit a roadblock, every time some other agency is responsible. But I went to this hearing, and it was the South Coast Air Quality Management District, and they're the regulators that are supposed to be taking care of air quality. And they allegedly appoint an independent hearing board to hear the cases of the air quality district versus SoCalGas. So I went to one of these hearings. It was at my high school, which was so weird to be sitting in my high school for that. You know, I never went back to my high school, and now I'm sitting in the gym for this. But the saddest part was just watching all these residents so desperate. You know, there was one woman begging for air filters to be put in schools because so many of the schools that haven't been evacuated still don't have filters. There was a woman who came and was pleading with the hearing board, which, well, I'll get to that in a second, but they were pleading with the hearing board to just not let SoCalGas choose who did the independent study of the long-term health effects of benzene and methane and the mercaptans, which are what's added to the gas so that people know that there's gas leaking in the air, which is mostly what's making people sick. Another guy came down just to testify that there may have been a conflict of interest in the way that the independent hearing board was appointed because SoCalGas was involved with the appointment. And I haven't researched out enough to comment extensively on it, but just watching this display was like really disheartening just because we're made to believe we have this democracy and the government represents us. And then I'm watching these residents whose kids are sick, their families are sick, they've been forced to evacuate. And they get 3 minutes. That's it. They get 3 allotted minutes to plead with this independent bureaucratic hearing board to please do something about their health. And so for me, that was just really difficult to watch. I mean, these are people that, you know, I grew up in Granada Hills, and they're from Porter Ranch, and Granada Hills is the next town over from Porter Ranch. But the Aliso Canyon facility is pretty much in between the two. These two towns run parallel to the street that the facility is on. And so there are plenty of people from Granada Hills who are sick. Both my parents have been sick. And that has been really difficult to watch, too, because I consider myself an activist, and I can't even help my stepdad with his cluster headaches. And just to give a little more perspective on how much they aren't saying, Los Angeles Times, all the outlets report that the leak happened on October 23rd. And it's funny because the language gets a little sticky, and it's almost like you can tell they're trying to avoid actually reporting when it happened. But they say it happened October 23rd. My stepdad started getting debilitating cluster headaches early October, like the beginning of the month. And there are other testimonies I read that confirm the same thing. So first, let's not pretend that it happened on the 23rd. It happened before, and who knows how long they waited to tell the public. It was only when people were complaining of being sick that they finally owned up to it, and then they said it wasn't that bad. And it's just this constant, like, I don't know what the word is, but they're just constantly maneuvering their talking points in order to make it seem like it's not as bad as it is. But on the other hand, on the flip side of that,
it's kind of reminds me of what went on with the whole BP spill as well. I mean, it just kind of seems similar.
Well, yeah, and it's been compared to that. That's the thing, it's really, really bad. Like, people are sick, people are dizzy, their children are dizzy, they're throwing up, they're having trouble breathing. My mom was in denial about it. She finally admitted that she's sort of like fatigued and foggy in the morning, and her asthma's been way worse. But I think what's most concerning to me is that nobody's doing anything. I mean, they're doing things. Like, yes, the air quality district sued SoCalGas, but what's that going to do? Like, maybe get some settlements for the families? What does that do right now? We don't know what the long-term effects of benzene are, and SoCalGas gets to fund the study that's going to determine that. So this entire experience is really, as if I wasn't skeptical enough about the system and government and representation, this experience in my hometown has really solidified it for me. And at the same time, I've also watched some outlets on the internet really sensationalize it, because I'm not saying it's malicious. I'm not saying it's intentional. I'm not saying it's disinformation and they're trying to mislead and terrify people, but I would contend maybe they haven't seen all the information. They haven't seen the website of this air quality board, which publishes all the information on hearings. It publishes all the readings they have. And I wouldn't say trust the government, obviously, but there is information available, like legal documents that show that a lot of the sensational headlines aren't really accurate anymore. They might have been a couple months ago, but they have made progress in filling the leak. There is less methane in the air right now. People are still sick. My stepdad's still sick. My mom's still sick. If I go there, I get a headache. But it's not, I mean, if it were as toxic as some of the headlines would have you believe, everybody would be suffering right now, and they're not. There's still a lot of people in the areas that don't have any symptoms. That's not to say that it's not totally dangerous and it's a catastrophe happening as we speak, but it's always interesting to see the way things unfold on the internet and how they're reported. And since I'm actually here, I've never been in this situation. I never thought I would be in this situation. So it's just interesting to watch from the ground.
Well, the good news, I think, is that all this pressure now coming in from the country and especially from people in the area is now at least getting them to start doing some kind of actions to start cleaning this thing up. And as you said, there's no telling and no knowing and how long this thing was going on before it was finally, the public was finally, made aware of it. It could have been going on for months. We don't know. But it's good to see that they're actually starting to fix it and try to fix the leak. I know they still don't have any kind of concrete dates as far as when it's going to be fixed or anything like that. And of course,
well, they're saying the end of February. That's sort of what they're projecting. But it's just been like this back and forth, ridiculous. Like, first they wanted to burn methane gas off in order to get rid of it. And we're talking about a region where they banned cell phones and watches because it's so flammable because there's so much gas. Like, this is the level of competence we're dealing with right now. And at the same time, SoCalGas is trying to keep everything private. The Air Quality Hearing Board managed to stretch out the hearing to 4 separate occasions. And I talked to a woman who essentially was just convinced that they do this to dishearten people. They do this so people think they have no say and that they're never going to get anything done. And I can see why people feel that way, because watching this bureaucracy, watching 100 people gathered to try to overcome the power of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, it works. People get disheartened and they think that nothing's happening. It's on its way, but I don't expect any major reforms. Like, they will fix the leak. That's going to happen. They will try to pass new laws to prevent it in the future, but keep in mind that the whole issue is the safety valve, which they were supposed to keep on. There's a regulation written that was supposed to keep it on, but they didn't follow. So I'm like at a loss as to how more regulations would fix this, but we're not all going to die. We won't know about getting cancer until another few years when people start getting cases of rare thyroid cancers and bone cancers. But for now, we're on the up and up. I think it's not as bad as it was, although it's still extremely troublesome.
Well, hopefully the pressure helps, and maybe something to the wall on it.
Through the stereo, yo, here we go through the stereo.